Deputy, first stretcher for an infant right here. Second stretcher for a 7-year-old. You notify the hospitals.
You made a fire alarm. Notify both hospitals. This is an MCI drill.
Multiple patients, MCI drill. This is a drill 1512.
Officer, I'm Chaz Miller. I'm principal of the school. Came out here. It looks like you have multiple people that have actually been hurt. Obviously, some stuck under here. We just came out here, and the driver's right over there.
Here, help is on the way. They'll be here shortly. It will be okay. All right?
Any community
right here.
that has streets, school buses, and a dump truck have the potential of having a mass casualty incident. And these need to be practiced, regardless of whether you're a larger hospital or a smaller hospital, fire departments, police. They need to know how the system works to get children to safe care quickly.
So the scenario that day, we wanted to make a scenario that was real life and something that we would see on a daily basis.
This was a distracted driver scenario, and this is very common. And we go to accidents every day, some days.
The event was planned out to have a mass casualty incident occur involving pediatric patients.
The reality of this drill was quite high.
Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do.
Ear bleed, then you can go ahead, all right? I want you to... We barely have a pulse.
And I owe that a lot to the help of the folks from Aero Security. They brought in people who could not only paint up the mannequins with blunt force trauma types of injuries, they also had actors who went in as distraught parents, actually crying over their loved one being on the ground as the first responders arrived.
Our vehicle into a child's playground, 139 Ledge Street.
The events of the day began with getting the managers of each of the organizations to the scene to discuss what was going to happen.
We went over the script of when people were coming in, when 911 was going to be called, who was going to make those calls, and then when approximate times of when people might arrive.
We also spent time setting up the scene. We parked a truck in the playground to simulate something that would have crashed into the playground. School staff were also coached in how to respond, so that once they were given the signal, the crash would be declared, and they would take over and call 911 and run to the scene and start to render first aid as best they could. This was followed by the arrival of the Nashville Police Department, many of whom are skilled in providing basic first aid.
A lot of this training kind of put our newer policies, the medical side of our training, into practice, and I thought it was very successful seeing the officers come in there with their medical kits and triaging the patients before actual medical personnel arrived.
At the beginning of the drill, the first engine company officer that arrived was getting reports of 10 patients. He could see them, and he radioed to me that he thought that this would be a mass casualty incident, which, with his report, I declared it to our fire alarm dispatch a level 1 mass casualty, which automatically gets things in motion, which is 10 ambulances get called right off the bat.
As responders arrived and started treating the children, you could see the hesitancy in dealing with this type of thing. They would read the triage cards that were on each of the patients and decide what type of care to give. And it's hard to step over a child that might be dead.
Dead on arrival.
Yeah, so
Code
there's
10.
a young man against the fence. Great example.
The scenario was very traumatic. If it was a real incident, you know, you have juvenile victims, you had families, so it would have been a very chaotic scene. But I think the more we train and the more we deal with actors and scenarios like this, it makes the officers more prepared to handle the situation.
This particular incident, because it was a mass casualty incident, it was at a school, we had police on scene helping. So what we call a unified command, we have one representative from fire, one representative from police, we had somebody from school, we had somebody from AMR. When it gets to a bigger scenario like this and we get into unified command, this is where training really helps so that the police, fire, AMR, and the hospitals can work together and see how it works.
I was so impressed with the first responders because of their calm. And I know it was a drill, but again, the emotions of what was around it and the realistic view of it all, they were very calm, very methodical with everything they did. It made me feel very, very safe. If ever that happened, that we would be in really good hands.
So the exercise gave each of the responding groups the chance to test out their pediatric triage protocols.
8-year-old male, partial right leg amputation, does have pulses in the leg.
In a mass casualty event, you have color codes for different levels of care. Category black means there's no care to be given. Category red, it's immediate life-saving techniques. Category yellow, yes, they're injured, and they do need to be moved fairly quickly, but not as quickly as the red. Or the category green, which is a minor injury, and they can be transported last to the hospital.
AMR's role was coordinating the transportation and treatment of the pediatric patients in this scenario. As the first ambulance on the scene, we took care of the triaging that would take place with these types of patients, and then the coordination of incoming mutual aid ambulances that would transport the victims to hospitals. We're also very much involved in the tracking of those patients, in this instance children, so that we have a very clear understanding of where these children were taken.
This is ALS 10. We'll be transporting one critical, one minor to Southern Med Center.
AMR ambulance then moved the patients to the Southern New Hampshire Medical Center Emergency Department, where staff from our emergency department as well as pediatrics attended these patients. At the same time, our incident command team had been activated, and they were being provided details of what was going on, and they were making arrangements for further care of these patients in the event that they had to be transferred out to tertiary care.
It's always a challenge to simulate something to this magnitude. We suddenly had an influx of about 7 patients within about 10 minutes, which in a mass casualty event may certainly occur. And how you manage that is a real challenge. So there was a level of anxiety that you could feel as the patients roll in and decisions being made about what to do with each individual patient. The debriefing after the mass casualty event is an essential part of having this simulated drill.
We all get in a room together, we walk through the scenario, we talk to each other about things that we saw that could use improvement, things that worked well, and then things that didn't work so well.
It's very important to do these trainings. It's just, again, it shows our weaknesses, our strengths, and things that we need to work on, and usually it's the biggest issue that I find in some of these drills is communication between the different agencies, and this really helps us close those gaps.
Having everybody in the same room is very beneficial because we got to hear how other agencies viewed us, what we did right, what we did wrong.
We get an after-action report that details all of the pluses and minuses of the event and makes recommendations of where we can improve next time, and then we meet after that to see if those recommendations have been implemented, and then eventually we'll test them again to make sure that it works.
These drills are great preparation for us because we can read it on paper, we can see a video about it, but to be in it and have the real emotion and the real people around you doing exactly what they do in emergency, all of a sudden it triggers something in our brain that, wow, this is something to remember. This is what I would do in this situation.
At the end of the day, hearing the responses during the hot wash, I thought the exercise was a success. And I think it's another great example of how this organization and the emergency responders of Greater Nashua work together.